picture this for a second. You are 19 years old. You are a teenager who has never released a single record.
Right, completely untested in the industry.
Exactly. And you are sitting in this massive, intimidating, wood-paneled boardroom across from the head of A&R at EMI Records.
Oh, wow. That is terrifying.
I mean, it really is. This is a seasoned executive named Bob Mercer. And he's flanked by this whole table full of industry veterans who've just, we've seen it all.
Yeah.
And they are looking at you, a teenager, and telling you flat out that they are going to release your conventional rock track, James and the Cold Gun, as your debut single.
Because it's safe.
Right. They are absolutely convinced that the song you actually want to release, this wild, theatrical, completely bizarre track called Wuthering Heights, is just going to hit a brick wall on mainstream radio.
They thought it was too weird.
Totally. They thought the vocal register was way too high and the song structure was just too bizarre for the public.
Yeah. And we really need to emphasize the gravity of this moment, because it is not just a polite disagreement where a young artist nods and says, "Oh, okay, sir," or whatever you think is best.
Right. She doesn't just fold.
Not at all. You have this debut teenager stubbornly, tearfully refusing to back down to a room full of seasoned music executives.
I mean, the sheer grit is unbelievable.
It really is. The absolute fierce artistic agency she showed in that room is staggering. She essentially went to war with them over her very first single, proving right out of the gate that she would not be manufactured.
She goes to war and, well, she actually wins. They concede.
Which is a miracle in itself.
It is. But the audacity doesn't even stop there. She then completely halts the initial release date, which was supposed to be the 4th of November, 1977.
Wait, really? She stopped the release?
Yes. And not because the mix was wrong, but simply because she hated the proposed sleeve artwork.
Oh, that is amazing.
I know. She just flat out rejects their visual packaging and delays the entire massive rollout to the 20th of January, 1978.
Which, turns out to be one of the greatest accidental escapes in pop music history.
How so?
Well, we can debate the sheer luck of it, but by pushing that release date to January, Bush inadvertently saved her debut from being completely buried under the 1977 holiday sales rush.
Well, because of Wings?
Exactly. That entire Christmas season in the UK was just dominated by Wings' massive, inescapable hit, Mull of Kintyre.
Yeah, that song was everywhere.
It was a cultural juggernaut. It sold millions of copies. If she had released a weird avant-garde debut in November, she might have been swallowed whole by Paul McCartney's Shadow.
It's such a good point. Instead, her absolute demand for creative control over everything. I mean, from the track selection to the album cover leads to a historic payoff.
It really cemented her legacy before it even began.
Truly. By sticking to her guns, she became the first woman in British chart history to reach #1 with a self-written, self-composed song. Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking.
It really is a watershed moment for music.
It is. And, our mission for this deep dive today is to explore exactly how this teenager pulled this off.
There's so many layers to it.
So many. We're going to dive into a stack of historical accounts, musicological analyses, and cultural retrospectives to figure out how Kate Bush merged Victorian Gothic literature, avant-garde musicology, and theatrical mime to completely rewrite the rules of pop authorship.
Because to understand how a teenager even arrives at such a singular, uncompromising vision, a vision strong enough to fight a major label over, we really have to go back to a late night in March 1977.
Right, let's set the scene for that. So Bush is 18 years old at the time. She's at her family's farmhouse, working late at a Bösendorfer piano.
Just completely in the zone.
Yeah, in this state of deep, isolated creativity. And she happens to catch, I think it was the final 10 to 20 minutes of a 1967 BBC television serial of Wuthering Heights.
Just the very end of it.
Right, she literally just sees the ending sequence where the ghost of Catherine Earnshaw is tapping on the glass, desperately demanding to be let in.
And we really need to do some myth busting right here, because the historical narrative often gets this completely backwards.
Oh, about her being obsessed with a book.
Exactly. The legend that always gets repeated is that she was this brooding schoolgirl with a lifelong obsession with Emily Bronte's novel, and that she spent years crafting the perfect homage.
Which makes for a great story, but
that is simply not true. She wrote the song in just a few hours that very night, based purely on the intense visual imagery she saw on television.
Wow, just from those 10 minutes of TV.
Yes. She actually only read Emily Bronte's novel afterward to verify the emotional tone, check the character dynamics, and make sure she got the research right before heading to the studio.
Okay, let's unpack this, because there's a detail here that the 1970s rock journalism machine just went absolutely wild for once the song blew up.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
While doing that post-writing research, Bush discovered she shared a birthday with Emily Brontë.
It's just such a crazy coincidence.
Yeah. They were both born on the 30th of July. Brontë in 1818. And Bush exactly 140 years later in 1958.
The music press, of course, ate that up. They loved a good mystical angle.
They did. The press tried to frame this shared birthday as some sort of, occult, fatalistic reincarnation mandate.
Like she was possessed by Bronte's spirit.
Exactly, like she was in a mystic trance, channeling the dead author. But when you look at her own accounts, Bush was actually incredibly practical about the whole thing.
She was very grounded.
She was. She viewed it simply as a fun, poetic coincidence, a nice little alignment that fueled her creativity, not some mystic directive from beyond the grave.
Right. She wasn't holding seances in the farmhouse.
No. She was just a highly capable artist inspired by a great story.
Precisely. But having captured this ghost story at her piano, she then had the monumental task of translating it into a pop record.
Which was not easy.
No, and the battle she fought with EMI wasn't just about the lyrics or the subject matter. It was about a radically unconventional musical architecture that frankly terrified the executives.
So let's get into the studio and talk about the recording, because this happens in July 1977 at Studio 2, AR Studios.
With producer Andrew Powell.
Right, Andrew Powell and engineer John Kelly. EMI insists she use seasoned professional session musicians. And Bush, well, she steps into the vocal booth and captures her lead vocal in a single, uninterrupted take.
One take.
One take, no comping.
Which, we should point out, is practically unheard of for a debut artist.
Wait, let's clarify that for a second. You mentioned she didn't do any comping. For anyone listening who isn't a studio engineer, what does that actually mean in the context of a 1970s recording session?
Great question. Comping is short for compiling. Normally, a singer records a song multiple times.
Like 10 or 20 takes.
Exactly. Then the engineer physically takes a razor blade to the magnetic tape, cuts out the best chorus from take 1, the best verse from take 3, and literally glues them together to create one perfect artificial performance.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that manual back then.
It was incredibly tedious. But Bush refused to do that. She sang the entire song with all of its insane vocal acrobatics straight through, flawlessly in one continuous run.
That is just wild.
To do that at 18, in front of veteran session players, establishes absolute dominance in that room.
It really sets the bar for everyone else. And speaking of stepping up to that bar, Ian Berenson played the lead guitar solo at the end of the track.
Oh, this story's legendary.
It is. He's playing a 1974 Gibson Les Paul, double track through a Marshall amp. And he does this while his arm is entirely immobilized in a plaster cast from a trail bike accident.
A broken arm.
Yes.
Yeah.
The physical mechanics of holding and shredding on a heavy piece of mahogany wood with a broken arm is just staggering dedication.
It really is. And beneath that soaring solo, you have David Patten contributing this incredibly grounding bass line on the bass guitar.
That bass line is so iconic.
It is, and he uses these subtle chromatic passing tones, meaning he's stepping outside the standard scale for brief moments.
Which creates a lot of tension, right?
Exactly. It gives the song this very uneasy shifting foundation. It never quite lets you settle.
And the harmony itself is just wild.
It is mathematically complex. The song utilizes what musicologists call chromatic mediant shifts.
Okay, music theory time.
Basically, it fundamentally moves from A major, which represents earthly memory in the physical world, to D flat major in the chorus, which represents the spectral otherworld of the ghost.
Wait, hold on. You said chromatic mediant shifts. I know we're moving from A major to D flat major, but what does that actually feel like to the listener?
Good point.
Why not just use a normal chord progression?
Well, because a normal chord progression feels logical. It feels like walking up a set of stairs. A chromatic mediant shift, especially between these two specific keys, is jarring.
Because they don't belong together.
Right. They share very little harmonic DNA. To the listener, it doesn't feel like stepping up a stair. It feels like falling through a trapdoor into another dimension.
Oh, I love that description.
You are literally being thrown from the living world into the spectral void of the ghost just by the math of the chords.
And then, on top of that trapdoor, there is the metrical volatility. The time signature is constantly shifting.
It's all over the place.
It's like, imagine you're walking on those open Yorkshire moors, and you physically lose your footing because a massive gust of wind just slams into you.
That is a great analogy.
That's exactly what those drop beats feel like. It's not just a music theory trick. It's the musical equivalent of being battered by the weather.
What's fascinating here is how she actually delivers the vocal over that storm.
Because her voice cuts right through it.
It does. But the media at the time didn't understand it, and they mercilessly mocked her, quote-unquote, wailing falsetto. But her pitch range actually sat squarely in a standard female mezzo-soprano or soprano range. The ethereal, impossible sound she was creating wasn't about extreme pitch at all.
Wait, really? It wasn't about the pitch?
No, it was a highly deliberate timbral manipulation.
Okay, so if it wasn't just her singing unnaturally high, how exactly did she produce that piercing, ghostly sound?
She fundamentally altered the physical shape of her vocal tract.
How do you even do that?
Well, she was actively lowering her soft palate, which is the squishy part at the roof of the back of your mouth, while simultaneously narrowing her pharyngeal cavity, which is the space right above the vocal cords.
That sounds physically exhausting.
It takes immense control. It is a technique very similar to those used in traditional Peking opera. By doing that, she projects this incredibly piercing, ringing tone with almost zero chest resonance.
So it sounds totally unearthly.
Exactly. She sounds like a ghost calling through the wind because she literally reshaped the acoustic space inside her own skull to filter out all the warmth of a human body.
That is just brilliant. So this entire sonic instability, the dropped beats, the dimension-shifting chords, the physically reshaped voice, it all perfectly supports the lyrics.
Everything works together.
But what makes this track a true masterpiece and why it holds up so well today is how Bush fundamentally flipped the power dynamic of the original 1847 novel to exert female agency.
Yes, her adaptation choices are completely subversive.
Because she changed the perspective, right?
She did. The lyrics condense chapter 3 of Brontë's novel. But in Brontë's text, this window scene is told entirely through the terrified perspective of a man named Mr. Lockwood.
The visitor.
Right. He's a cowardly visitor who hears the ghost, and to protect himself, he actually violently pulls the ghost's wrist onto the jagged, broken glass of the window to keep her out.
Which is a horrific image of male violence against a female specter.
It is extremely violent.
But Bush bypasses Lockwood completely. She totally removes the male narrator's framing, Instead, she adopts the first-person perspective of Catherine's ghost, and she bypasses the visitor to sing directly to Heathcliff.
Which totally shifts the power.
Exactly. Imagine you are reading a classic Victorian novel, and instead of taking the narrator's word for it, you snatch the microphone away from the cowardly man and hand it directly to the monster outside the window.
That is exactly what she did.
That's what Bush did. She centered the so-called hysterical woman as a visionary, powerful creator.
And importantly, she doesn't sanitize Catherine to make her a flawless victim in the process.
No, she keeps all the messy part.
Exactly. The lyrics compress all of Catherine's moral complexity. She explicitly includes the jealousy, the selfishness, the destructive passion, reminding him that he had a temper just like her jealousy, singing that she was too hot, too greedy.
Which brings up a great point about pop culture at the time. How were female ghosts usually portrayed in the 70s?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you really have to look at how 1970s pop usually handled these tropes. Usually, when pop music depicted female figures in ghost stories, they were completely passive subjects.
Like just sad spirits drifting around?
Pretty much. They were the tragic, weeping object of male groove, or the ethereal object of male desire. Bush completely subverts this. Her Kathy is an active, demanding pursuer.
She's not taking no for an answer.
Not at all. She's actively threatening to grab your soul away. It transforms what could be a passive, tragic death into an eroticized Gothic battle for dominance.
Wow.
She reframes the afterlife not as a place of quiet rest, but as a space where the female subject exerts total, terrifying control over the living.
And she didn't just want you to hear this powerful ghost, she wanted you to see her. The visual iconography of this single became just as crucial to its legacy as the lead vocal itself.
Right, because two very distinct videos were made for the track, each emphasizing a different aspect of this haunting.
Let's start with version 1, which is the UK and international version. This was shot outdoors on Salisbury Plain.
With that iconic outfit.
Yes. Bush wore this bright red dress, and she's performing outside amidst rolling, freezing morning mist. She's really embodying this untamed, earthy, bloodbound spirit.
Then there's version 2, which was created for the US market. That one was shot entirely indoors in a dark studio.
Right, totally different vibe.
Very different. Bush is in a white gown, floating in artificial mist, looking much more like a pure spectral phantom suspended in a void.
Her choreography in both of these videos is absolutely mesmerizing. And it wasn't typical pop dancing.
Not at all.
It was deeply influenced by the mime artist Lindsay Kemp, who, fun fact, also trained David Bowie, and by Martha Graham's highly structural modern dance techniques, which Bush learned from a teacher named Robin Kovac.
You can clearly see those avant-garde influences in specific, deliberate movements she performs.
Like what?
Well, there's what choreographers call a reach, where her fingers are strained and stretched, physically trying to connect across the boundary of death.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Then there's the window sweep, where she uses flat palms to visually define the invisible glass barrier she's strapped behind, and she uses these incredibly sharp, violent abdominal contractions to visualize intense internal grief.
It isn't just dancing. It is pure physical theater.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the media at the time completely lacked the vocabulary for this.
They really didn't know what to do with her.
They didn't. The interviewers obsessed over her looks and her age, completely ignoring the mime and the literature. Even her own label, EMI, completely missed the point.
What did they do?
They used a promo poster of her in a tight pink top to sell the record, leaning into standard pinup marketing.
Oh, typical 70s industry move.
Completely. And Bush openly and fiercely criticized this. She demanded they focus on her skills as a composer, a pianist, and an arranger, not just her physical appearance. She was constantly pushing back against the entire industry machine that wanted to diminish her to just a pretty face.
And we should note, the media hasn't always gotten the historical facts right either. There's a very persistent myth that people love to repeat about this era.
The Saturday Night Live myth.
Yes. They often claim that Bush performed Wuthering Heights in her iconic red dress on U.S. television Saturday Night Live in December 1978, which supposedly cemented her global weirdness.
But that's not true, is it?
In reality, that never happened. She did perform on that broadcast, but she performed Them Heavy People and The Man with the Child in His Eyes, and she did it calmly seated at her piano. She never actually performed Wuthering Heights on that U.S. broadcast.
So what does this all mean for us today? By demanding total control over the single choice, the delayed release date, the complex production, and the challenging visuals, Bush created a template for female autorism that still resonates globally.
Absolutely, because despite the initial radio resistance, where stations literally thought it was too weird to play independent stations like Capital Radio bravely championed it.
They took a chance on it.
They did. And that groundswell of organic listener interest pushed it to #1 on the 11th of March, 1978, and it stayed there for 4 solid weeks.
And she never stopped tinkering with it, which is the mark of a true auteur. In 1986, she actually revisited the song for the whole story compilation.
Right, she went back in.
She went back into the studio and recorded a new vocal because she felt her original take sounded like a very little girl, and she wanted a more mature, grounded tone for her legacy.
But the original imagery she created, especially the red dress from Salisbury Plain, has taken on an incredible life of its own.
Oh, the Shambush event.
Yes, in 2013, a performance group called Shambush sparked a massive global phenomenon. Now we have the most Wuthering Heights day ever, which happens annually.
It's so much fun to watch.
Thousands of fans gather in public parks worldwide, from Berlin to Sydney, all dressed in red, to communally recreate her outdoor choreography.
From fighting Bob Mercer in an EMI boardroom to pioneering the use of the wireless headset microphone on her 1979 tour just so she could incorporate her mime and dance freely on stage, Bush laid the groundwork for entirely new generations of artists.
She really broke the mold.
She did. You can draw a direct, undeniable line from her uncompromising vision to artists like Bjork, St. Vincent, and Florence Welch.
This raises an important question for anyone listening who loves music. Look at the highly polished, algorithm-driven pop landscape right now.
It's very controlled.
Very. How many artists today are allowed the grace to be truly weird, deeply literary, and uncompromisingly demanding on their very first debut single? Kate Bush didn't ask for a seat at the table. She forced the industry to make room for her, entirely on her own terms.
It really makes you think. What if the true haunting of Wuthering Heights isn't Catherine Earnshaw's ghost at all? Perhaps the real ghost is Kate Bush's unyielding artistic spirit, forever tapping at the window of the music industry, reminding every new generation of musicians that absolute creative control is worth fighting for, even if you have to go to war to get it. If you like this episode, please support the show by liking and subscribing.